As agriculture began to replace hunting and gathering during the Stone Age, hierarchical leadership structures began to emerge. Ancient Egypt, whose pharaohs amassed a stunning amount of wealth to take to their impressively constructed graves, was an obvious example of this transition. Starting around 6000 BC, Old Egyptian built two civilizations, one in the Delta, the other in Upper Egypt lands. The two were united later then by King Narmer. The Egyptian Empire lasted from about 5550 BC to 30 BC and saw many different pharaohs during the three kingdoms called the Old Kingdom, Middle and New Kingdom. They made it for about 5,500 years. Mamma mia! Let's see the timeline of the Golden Empire. Pre-dynastic period. From 5550 BC to 3050 BC. Up to 13 kings ruled in Upper Egypt during this period who were known as the Horus people. Most famous kings of pre-dynastic period, Horus or Scorpion. He is so popular. Horus Roe. Horus Narmer or Catfish. In this era the first hieroglyphic symbols were used by craftsmen. Early dynastic period. 3050 BC to 2686 BC. The most important kings of this era. Narmer. Narmer was a pharaoh of the first dynasty in the early dynastic period. He was the first pharaoh to unite the lands of Upper and Lower Egypt. A palette found by Egyptologists shows him wearing the white crown and bashing an enemy on one side. On the opposite side, Narmer wears the red crown as he surveys the bodies of his enemies. Later historians left his name out of the king lists, but Egyptologists have found many items mentioning him. King Mens, or Haraha, the Hawk King, Ment is a pharaoh that Herodotus claimed founded the first dynasty in the early dynastic period. Later historians claim he built the walls of Memphis, but the evidence does not support this myth. In some historical theories, Menj and Narmer is the same person. Well, who knows? The third era called Old Kingdom. From 2686 BC to 2181 BC. Old Kingdom is the period from 3rd Dynasty to 6th Dynasty. This was a very civilized era. The Great Pyramid at Giza and the Great Sphinx are built, and the most famous kings and queens are ruling. For example, Sneferu. 2613 to 2589 BC. Sneferu was a pharaoh of the 4th dynasty in the time of the Old Kingdom. He built the first true pyramid and changed the orientation of the funerary complex to east-west. He built 2 pyramids in the funerary complex at Dashur, but his burial was in the Red Pyramid. Scholars call Sneferu's first pyramid the Bent Pyramid. Structural flaws made it necessary to change the angle of its sides. Khufu Cheops. 2589 to 2566 BC. Khufu was a pharaoh of the 4th dynasty. He built the Great Pyramid. Here you go, Khufu. Well done. This pyramid is unusual for its large size and because its burial chamber is in the center of the pyramid rather than at the bottom. His complex also includes 3 pyramids for his queens and a mastaba for his vizier. Egyptologists have found 2 dismantled ships beside the Great Pyramid and they restored one of them. Khafre or Chephren. 2558 to 2532 BC. Khafre was a pharaoh of the 4th dynasty in the time of the Old Kingdom, and he built the 2nd largest pyramid at Giza. The Great Pyramid and Khafre's pyramid appear to be the same size because Khafre built his pyramid on a higher elevation. He also built a funerary complex that included the Great Sphinx near the causeway leading up to his pyramid. Contrary to some stories, slaves did not build the Giza pyramids. The citizens of Egypt did. The pharaohs organized a tax system that allowed them to keep a workforce building the pyramids. Pepi II. Pepi was a pharaoh from the 6th dynasty during the Old Kingdom, and his rule was Egypt's longest, 94 years. The first half of his reign seems to have been prosperous, with trade existing with various places. During the later part of his reign, local officials grew in power and began setting up little kingdoms. The second half of Pepi's reign was a time of economic crisis. Circumstances forced him to establish an economic overseer in Upper Egypt. Fourth era is called First Intermediate Period. From 2181 BC to 2040 BC, pharaohs of the 7th to 10th Egyptian dynasties. Then comes number 5, Middle Kingdom. From 2040 BC to 1782 BC, pharaohs of the 11th, 12th, 13th Egyptian dynasty. This era was ruled by about 25 kings. One of the most famous kings, Senusret I. Senusret was a pharaoh from the 12th dynasty in the Middle Kingdom. His reign was a time of peace with no records of military campaigns. Senusret was the first pharaoh to begin irrigating the Fayum to open more land for cultivation purposes. His statues show signs of his actual appearance, which marks a new idea in the depiction of pharaohs. Senusret built a pyramid and a funerary complex at Lehan. 6th era, called Second Intermediate Period. From 1782 BC to 1570 BC. Contains pharaohs of the 14th to the 17th Egyptian dynasty. Then comes number 7, the New Kingdom. From 1570 BC to 1070 BC. Pharaohs of the 18th, 19th and 20th Egyptian dynasty. In this era we find many famous names who built great empires. Here they come in order. Ahmose, Amenhotep, Tuthmose, Tuthmose II, Queen Hatshepsut, Amenhotep II, Tuthmose III, Amenhotep III, Akhenaten, first known as Amenhotep, Smenkhkar, the famous Tutankhamun, Horemheb, Ramses I, Seti, Ramses II, Merenptah, Amenmes, Seti II, Siptah, Queen Tuasret, Setnecht, Ramses III to Ramses XI. Yeah, they had 11 Ramses. It must have been a nice name. Then after this whole great era, the New Kingdom pharaohs was buried in the Valley of the Kings. To start number 8, Third Intermediate Period. From 1070 BC to 525 BC. Pharaohs of the 21st to 25th Egyptian dynasty. The 9th period was called Late Period, from 672 BC to 332 BC. Pharaohs of the 26th to 31st Egyptian dynasty. And here comes the end of actual pharaohs. After that, Egypt becomes part of the Roman Empire, and been ruled by Ptolemaic dynasty, from 332 BC to 30 BC, ending that great empire with Queen Cleopatra. Although Cleopatra was Greek, she was also considered as the last pharaoh of Egypt. Watch our next video for more info about life of famous pharaohs.